Good morning, everyone. It's Elsie. I am here with my third update for the Arts Marathon. First, I actually did get a question from one of you, and the question is, do I need to be concerned about the colors of the floss running later on? So, um, the floss, as long as you get it from like a commercial company like DMC, or I think there's one called Anchor, it is all color fast. So I don't think you ever have to worry about that kind of floss running. But there are like handicrafters or smaller businesses that sell hand-dyed floss. And so you might have to worry about that running. But again, to me, you wouldn't have to worry about that unless you got it wet, or I don't know, maybe if it was in the sun, it would fade. But for the most part, the floss that I've been using thus far, I don't think it will ever run or anything like that. So, but that's a great question. But yeah, anything that's hand dyed is something you would have to worry about that with. So, okay, so I have started. This fabric is definitely different than what I'm used to. It's not as stiff. It feels softer and a little bit delicate, so I'm trying not to pull my stitches too tight because I don't want the fabric to pucker. But yeah, and it just took a little while for me to get used to. I'm not used to doing all black. So here's what I have. And you can see, I'll show you the pattern with it. So up here in the top right of the pattern is this big flower, and that's what I'm working on right now. So part of doing this is kind of getting a strategy in your head about what direction you're going to work or what elements you're going to do first, because you really want to avoid having to end and cut your floss and then starting again. But you also don't want to carry your floss like from one area across like more than 3 squares, I would say. So it's kind of getting a strategy for how to do things most efficiently. So I decided to do this flower first, and then after I'm done doing the flower, I will probably cut my floss, and then I will start here and go down and then do this whole leaf area. And then I'm going to do my rabbit in gray. So that's kind of where I'm at. So to give you an idea, this was all done with one probably maybe 2 foot long strand or 2 foot long piece of floss that I then divided into 3 parts of 2 strands each. So that did all of this. And it was probably a couple hours of me working last night. So kind of the joke with cross stitchers is like they'll post a picture that looks like a very small area to me and be like, I spent 165 hours doing this. So, and you know, people work differently too, doing cross stitch. Some people make all of their stitches go the same direction. Even if I did that here, I don't really think you would notice. So this is very full coverage, I am noticing. So I'm sure some people will do 1 strand on 18 count Aida, but this is 2 strands, so it's very full looking. It's very dark. But other people also have, like there's a little tool, and I forget, like a laying tool, and it'll make it so that every time you make a stitch, the 2 strands will lay perfectly flat. Now, I don't mind some texture in my work, so I don't do that. I also don't make all of them face the same direction. What else do people do? But yeah, so how long it takes you to do a certain area really depends on the method that you're using. The other thing that people post about a lot in some of these Facebook groups is the back. Some people are very like obsessed with making sure the back is super, super neat. So I'm not obsessed with that, but I do try to keep it clean. And the main reason is that if you leave too many sort of tails around, they can get caught up in the other stitching that you're doing. So here's the last, excuse the language if it's not for you, but this is the last piece that I finished. And so just a couple things. So this actually was supposed to end at this purple line here, but I wanted it to be more rounded so it would look better in a nice round frame, which I have ordered. So I added these stars at the bottom. I just kind of duplicated this star and then added some little twinkly things like they had up here. And so, but I wanted to show you the back, which is not very neat, but I've also seen worse. And unfortunately, while I was doing this, I did get a few knots. Usually I can tell when there's a knot forming and I get it out, but I did not notice these knots until I was much past them, and so I was not going to go back. But they're pretty flat, and so I don't think you're going to notice them at all once it's framed. But yeah, so this was sort of the first time I had worked with full coverage. This is everything is a stitch here, and it makes it kind of stiff. I actually kind of like it. So yeah, so the back. I don't get too obsessed with the back, but some people get very obsessed with the back. Some people are, it's very interesting. Some people are really cross-stitch purists, and to them, there is a way to do cross-stitch, and there is no other way. But a lot of the sort of newer cross-stitch people are like, whatever makes you happy, just do it the way you want. And if someone makes a mistake and they post it and they're like looking for advice, everyone's like, I can't even notice it, just keep going or work around it, be creative, you know, do your own thing. So I love that attitude of it, because that's very much my attitude about things is, you know, yeah, if there's an obstacle, just work around it, and it doesn't have to be perfect. And really, for the most part, the whole thing about perfectionism is likely no one else will notice it but you. So are you going to fix it even though no one will notice it but you? So actually there is, there is one noticeable mistake that I made on here, and I realized it shortly thereafter, and I was just like, I'm not going to fix it. So I don't know if you can notice it, but it's the very tip of the ears. One of them, I put an extra black stitch that was supposed to be gray. But you probably didn't even notice it until I said that. So, oh, another thing on here that there was a couple other things I did. So these little whiskers were supposed to be up one level, but I realized that I put this one off. So then I just put this one off. So now it looks totally normal. So that's part of the creativity of doing this, is being able to adjust and adapt, you know, without having to undo a bunch of stitches, because to me, that's not very creative. The creativity is when you work around, you know, something, an issue. So yeah, so my back here is looking pretty neat. And I'm happy with how this is coming out. It definitely has taken some adjustment to use this fabric. Just looking at this, I'm not used to doing all black. So but I think the more that I've done, the more I'm starting to, you know, like it and envision how it's going to look at the end. You know, now that my flower is kind of starting to look like a flower. So that's great. Okay, so my hoop, right? I've got the extra on each side because I'm starting in the very top left corner. So I've got the extra on each side held with these magnetic ties, right, to keep it out of the way. So just as I'm not sure if I'll be able to get the entire page in this one hoop setting, but then when I move it, obviously I will probably end up with some wrapped on both sides and at the top and bottom. So, and one thing, so This fabric will sometimes get a little stringy, but that's wrapping it up really helps with that. And I have 3 inches on every side, so I'm sure I'm not going to unravel the whole thing. But I try to watch out for these little strings coming off the edges of my fabric. What else? Yeah, so this is a couple hours of work. It's really hard to tell how long this will take, but it went right along last night, so I'm pretty happy about that. I think that's about all I have to tell you today. I'm excited to do some of the other colors. So this first page will actually have all 4 of the colors that I'm doing on this project. So it should be really interesting once I get further along. So hopefully by tonight I'll have this flower done, and then I'll be started on the leaf part that the bunny's on. So I hope you have an amazing day, and please let me know if you have any other questions. Thanks.